an interesting way of looking at it. I consider myself an artist, basically, who's putting something together that demonstrates a lot of different things that I've learned over a lot of years fishing in the dumpsters. I was an Army brat. So yes, I moved some 45 times before I got to Austin. I changed schools. Moved 17 times before I got out of high school and changed schools 13 times, from South America to Germany, all of the United States. And then joined the Army briefly so I could get to college one day. And then went on to get an English American Lit degree, which with $1.50, $2, you can buy a buck of coffee, or a cup of coffee. And beyond that, degrees, for the most part, are mostly to make you more intelligent about the world. As far as getting and using for a job these days, I think it's a sellout to the kids. And so my opinion about college has changed dramatically since I was young. We need to educate them, but we need to give kids life skills. And unfortunately, we've abandoned that. So Texas Houses, in a lot of ways, is the manifestation of a fiction that I wrote 25, 30 years ago. And it's about our ability to transform our energy of soul into many things. We can communicate it through several ways. We can communicate it through touch. We can communicate it mind to mind. We can communicate it through wibbleizing, creating something. It's a set of words that I actually have for this that was part of the fiction. We won't necessarily go into it at the moment, but it effectively revolves around a world union of believers in the survival of the species. And also the same word, well, a world union of believers also represents this energy of soul within, because ultimately they're one and the same. And so effectively what I do, and I believe, and I wrote it in a fiction one time, a long time ago, that I didn't understand was a fiction. It wasn't a fiction when I wrote it, but it was my life coming into being 30 years later. Is that this energy of soul that we have within us allows us to transmute what's around us and turn it into something else. And we can do this by taking our ideas and actually going out there and manifesting them ourselves. If you depend on somebody else to manifest your ideas, you're going to be disappointed most of the time, because they're not going to think like you think, and they're not going to have the energy you have, nor the knowledge base, nor have they gone through all the wars and all the experiences that you have gone through in order to be able to be the person you are that makes you unique. And while traversing through this phase of our existence, we grow in our complexity based on how much of this energy so we pass through us and how much of the world we transmute into something better or worse. And I believe in transmuting it into something better. Now when I say transmute, this is all part of the chrysalis concept that's come about now, and all these things I'm now learning as I kind of link up and come out of stealth mode of just doing what I do and not really getting out there and mixing with a lot of people. And I find out a lot of the things that I believed in all this time actually have solid foundations in science and other things, and amongst them, my favorite thing to fall back on these days is the whole concept of Bakhtinian dialogism, which Bakhtin was a scientist who came up with the great discovery that when I've got a box and I'm doing an experiment, and the experiment is going on, and all of a sudden I go and I look at the experiment and watch it, the results change. Well, that's a big deal. If the results change just by my mere watching it, then all of a sudden that means that my impact upon whatever entity I come in touch with, my energy actually interfaces with, can be changed by that. Okay, we know that, even if it's an experiment on table. So since then we've learned that we can affect petri dishes, we can affect all sorts of things with just our energy. We can actually bend that energy and send it out and do things. So I chose to bend my energy out and send it out to do what? I basically saved things that were dying or dead and basically brought it back to life all my life. That means going into the trash cans and going into the dumpsters and salvaging old houses and bringing neighborhoods back, which ultimately brings people back together, which also creates a community. Once upon a time when I started out, I was chasing away the crime out of the neighborhood by going out there and trying to get the houses that had the crime concentrated in those spots and fix them up. What I didn't realize in the process of putting together the first newsletters that created the first concept of community and getting hold of all the owners inside and out and all the renters and saying, hey, we can come together, we can do this, we can be this other thing than what we're perceived to be. At the time, the American Statesman and the Austin Board of Realtors and the Chamber of Commerce were all pretty much anti-East Austin in those days, and if you had a rape in East Austin, it was rape in East Austin. If it was in Hyde Park, it was back here on about the 6th column back, and you didn't hear about the 16 rape. So there was a whole thing that was going on. It was like, we could change this around and just do it by believing and getting people to come over. And at the time, I called HUD at one point because 80% of the realtors in town were telling people, don't buy in East Austin. It's a terrible place, don't buy in East Austin. So I called Housing and Urban Development and said, come to East Austin. They're telling everybody don't come here. This is not supposed to happen. It's redlining. We don't have an inspector for Texas. I'm sorry, excuse me. There's no inspector? No, there's no inspector. So you mean they can do this and no big stuff? Oh no. So instead we had to resort to the other method, and that's basically what we did. Is we started doing it by manifesting the reality we wanted to have. I wrote newsletters and presented what I wanted to do and told people this was a place that they could be who they wanted to be. And in coming in, I fixed up houses that were literally up until the time they were occupied again, still being used for people to come in and try to turn tricks in and stuff like that. I mean, it was really a strange world. Manor Road, if you remember in the old days, you didn't go down Manor Road past a certain point. I bought my office on the weekend after a 17-year-old who was murdered by a 16-year-old who would deal on that corner for the day. And this is in memory of some people who've been around for a while. That's all transformed, it's gone, it's history. It's another world, we don't even see it now. What happened is, it was the kind of thing over the years of putting super glue on the coins and the telephones to knock out the communication systems of the dealers and working with everybody in the neighborhood to get together and bring it to force. That's all part of fixing up houses. What I did was I bought a house and I fixed it up. And this is why the story goes. Because ultimately, the real thing about tiny houses is that it comes from this desire to manifest my energy coming in on just literally into Austin with nothing to my name. And getting a house, back when the boom was still a boom at that point, $63,000 house, and watching my first ever house I got under finance, and watching it go down to $45,000 in 2 years. Remember the bust? Anybody's been around that long? So this neighborhood that was over in East Austin was an example of what I do now. We went in and I picked up houses that were maybe $11,000. I went in there and took and tore them all up, cleaned them all up, and recreated them and made a house. People moved into them. And eventually that house sold for what I sold for $63,000, was $130,000, da, 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 da. Because everyone we fixed up, is we fixed up a neighborhood or picked up a whole block of boarded up houses where the only people living in it were raising pit bulls and fighting cocks. And there was 210 calls a year because of the crime over there, and there's a 45-minute response time 6 blocks away from the police station. So there was not exactly a lot of attention paid to it until the first girl moved into the very first house I did over on Kittel. And the poor girl got broken into, didn't know it. She came into the house and was in her bedroom calling her mom. Mom, there's somebody in the house with me. And her mom's answering machine was picking it up. She called the police. 45 minutes she sat in that room, scared to death. That mom, when she got that tape recording on the news of her daughter in that room waiting 45 minutes, you know what? I had a 6-minute response time. And the world started to change because somebody had faith to move in and live in one of the tiny houses that I just resurrected. Of course, next door I had somebody who was also dropping crossbow bolts to the car dealer, the drug dealer's radiators, and they weren't coming back. There's some other things were going on because the natural effect of people wanting to defend their neighborhood. But ultimately what I'm saying is that this inspiration and stuff came because people started to have hope. They started to have a dream. So I came with nothing and I had a dream. My dream was really to be able to make enough money so I could publish my book one day. Because I decided I want to go and give it to the publishers because they were going to change it. I wanted to write the great American novel. Of course, that's what happens when you're an English American major. What do you want to do? I want to write the great American novel. Writing it and getting it published and getting it out to the world is a totally different thing. But it all comes down to this. If somebody came to you and said, this is your purpose, this is why you're here, and no matter how crazy this seems, ultimately, this is your job. That's why you're going to be going through all this crap. It said you can be at this spot somewhere down the road. Now all of us say, well, wait a minute, that can't happen. We can't possibly go from here to here and somebody know ahead of time we're supposed to end up there. I've argued that most of my life. Strangely enough, I wrote the book that said there was a fantasy, and all of a sudden here I am 30 years later, I'm over at this spot over here, and I'm getting a chance to actually articulate something that I wrote 30 years ago to people that are actually listening to me about changing our society by merely taking down little tiny houses and big houses that everybody considers to be trash and turning those into livelihoods and homes where the 76 million baby boomers who drank the Kool-Aid can now go out there and recognize that they have a chance to still live and be free of everything if they escape basically the US dollar. Now once I say the US dollar, effectively what we've all done is we've incremented our lives around a currency that's a fiat currency, but ultimately in the big picture, that makes all of our big houses, 40 million big houses in a generation of 76 million people, they're going to pass it off to 20 million kids who aren't going to have big families. Just in case anybody has other numbers, that means about 20 million big houses sitting around that don't need to be used for the next millennium. So most of those I wouldn't salvage. They've been made in the last 30 years. In 30 years we've been doing, the last 30 years we've been doing what? We've been putting vinyl in there, we've been putting basically all sorts of junk. We have plastics, we have sheetrock, we have carpet, we have fiberglass, we have concrete. We have a bunch of materials that for the most part are hazardous waste. Okay, now, I don't really care about those. I'm not going to salvage those. I'll cherry pick a few things out of there. But no, what I want is I want the good stuff. What I want is the industrial age, because actually the industrial age is what made us so big. It made us so wonderful. Why we abused it and wasted it, it's a sad, sad story. But the fact of the matter is we took all these resources, giant trees, forests, all this stuff that we had that was so abundant we didn't respect it. And the minerals, okay? And we did this with all these people that came from all over the place, all over the world, and brought all these skill sets and all this energy and these dreams. Again, dreams. I came with a dream. Dream wasn't to make money. The dream was to make enough money to do something. And that's what is actually the point of it all. It's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have that makes a difference when you're gone. It's your legacy. The pile of money, yeah, somebody will remember you for that, but what you did to make it, they'll remember more of that if they ever find out. And what you did with it, that's what everybody actually benefits from. So, in the process of my $670 that I had and my, then not long after, son being born at 31 years old, that changes your perspective a lot. All of a sudden you go from me, whoa, oh, who are you? I love you, I'm gonna do everything I can to make everything I can for you. That changes the whole focus of things. Because I'd moved all my life, I didn't have a lot of friends, I didn't have a lot of attachments. I basically had shed those because you can't keep it up as you move 45 times in your life for the most part. So having a child all of a sudden took me from being centric to back out to being, oh my God, you can't love like you can love a child. If we go from thinking that our houses and everything we have around us is what makes us happy to instead think about what's inside of us and what we give making us happy, it changes the whole equation. That neighborhood, eventually I went from winning awards for revitalization, building block awards for fixing the block, Entrepreneur of the Year award for socially responsible, to being the bad guy who gentrified the neighborhood, raised the taxes, caused the prices to go up, but was ultimately responsible for almost everything negative that happened in that neighborhood in the last 20 years, since it went from being a terrible neighborhood that nobody could remember into a neighborhood that nobody could afford. I was like, oh, wait a minute, why do I grow a target on my back here? Because I didn't think I was doing that. Now I understand what gentrification is, and frankly, you can't stop it. Another thing I learned, though, was that location. So I go in there and I build the most beautiful house, and it is something that I want to live in for the rest of my life. I run into all these old people who lived in French Place and they're now 75, 80 years old, and they're not paying more in taxes per year than they paid to buy the house originally. Unfortunately, their savings is incremented on the income they had at the time they bought that house. And the rate of return is nothing to compare. So what we're having now is a massive downsizing. It's a slight home right now. It's going to turn into a screen. Why? Because we can't afford to support all these houses we have, because our incomes won't support it, but more importantly, because they're going to be decaying income. Because we're still tied to the stupid US dollar. Okay. So, in fact, what we need is an alternative currency. We know that. So in my little machinations that I came up with, of course, I came up with a pure salvage living dollar. And what this means is that we go back to bartering things. We take all these houses that I can tear down, and we take all the old furniture that's going to be left behind, we take all the dishes we're going to be left behind, we take all these living resources that have been taken out of the earth, which is what I do. You notice I basically try to save, and all the stuff I can, the dishes, everything else, doesn't have to be made again. If it's fashionable to have used clothes on, everybody in here be wearing used clothes. If it's fashionable to have everything made from stuff that's already created and nothing that's new that's been taken out of the planet, and we have that, then all of a sudden things can change. Now here's the big surprise. We literally have probably somewhere in the realm right now, valued at its present value, probably at least, if not more, that's true? Okay. Easily. Easily.
That's $1 billion.
Oh, excuse me. See, look at that. Isn't that amazing? Okay. That's just how much salvage you probably just pick up out of the South right now. Just walk out and pick it up for free. It's a commodity, invisible commodity. I go out and get houses given to me. And what do? I go out and I empower somebody by teaching them how to be a salvage miner. Don't pay them by the hour, but I say, here's a house. Take it down, bring me the wood on Friday, and all the wood you bring me that's still whole, that's not cracked, that doesn't have nails in it, that I can use again, I'm going to pay you for it. And everything you don't, that's trash you have to deal with. That beats the heck out of making a slave wage out of an American, because I'll tell you what I've learned. If you make a slave wage out of, a wage slave, out of an American and pay him by the hour, he becomes a rebellious sort. He wants to get raises, he wants to have this, have that. If he doesn't get it, he may tend to steal something or figure out some way that he's going to negotiate a better deal, like taking his time doing his work. But if all of a sudden I go ahead and say, hey guy, I'm going to give you all you can make this week off of that wood. Well, you know what? His wife's out there pulling nails. His kids are out there gathering wood. And I'm going to tell you what, on Friday he pulls me $1,000 worth of wood in, and it's good looking wood. I didn't have to go out and watch him all week long after doing that. And also what? He has now turned his family into the most powerful thing in this country, and that's the family business. Because we all have a common interest now. Well, that family business has to work with this other family business, because effectively what you want to do is you want to gather living resources, and you want to do it, you want to gather them into a big warehouse, and that becomes your currency. The warehouse ultimately gives you everything you need to live, from your dishes to your clothes, or agreements with those who will do it, but you're bartering. And the difference is all those poor people on Social Security and stuff like that that are still attached over here and have to have this, they can only make so much money. So, gee, here's your other quandary. If you make too much money to pay your taxes, I'm going to take away your Social Security. That's a tough one. Okay, so what do? We barter. Barter's not taxable in this country. Okay, so what do? We set up our currency, which is of course the pure salvage living dollar. And it actually is just a metric that we put on. And the metric gives you a way to go ahead and have members, private membership of course, they can trade with each other and trap their barter in a metric that they can then change over here later on. It's all being kept in cyberspace, and basically what it is you're keeping it in these warehouses, what all these things right here, the community bank. And so everybody's got an investment in it, but here's what happens. My little houses, from being in a French place, it was so darn hard to go ahead and try to fix those things up. They were made pretty crappy to start with. What I've ultimately learned, after 50 or 60 houses, was that I could take it down, take all the pieces and parts, and put it back together and make something far superior to what I started. But most importantly, this little detail about location. You've been in your house for 40 years. Can't afford to live there anymore. Want to go live by the kids. Want to get out of the city. What do you got to leave behind? The most valuable thing in your life, your home, the most traumatic thing you can possibly leave behind. I'm going to tell you that from having experienced it. They say moving is the same as the death of the family. It's as traumatic as anything can get. You lose everybody you know, every connection you have in your existence. And if you can take your home with you instead of going to a little white cubicle with a bed and some pictures on the wall, and you can take your home over there, you're still home. If you don't open up the door and walk out, you're home. It's the essence of who you are. So, location, people can't afford to be here anymore, we got to downsize, what's going to happen? Well, we can create villages, we can go out and live in other places. Now, villages, what my whole concept is that we have to recreate community and support each other, unless any of you are very fond of having Uncle Sam and Nurse Ratched as your primary caretakers when you age. I'm not. Okay? I believe we need to try to figure out a way to survive together and support each other, and particularly you women who are going to outnumber us guys. Frankly, the numbers are pretty much in your favor. And unfortunately, you don't have the savings, you're taking care of your kids, there's all these reasons you don't have what you should have. And so we're all going to have to live in groups. You may not want any guys in your group, but we're all going to have to live in groups together. And there's going to be the one who loves to cook. She's going to be down at the main house where the main kitchen is. And there's going to be the guys out there that are growing everything. And there's going to be the mechanic who keeps the cars running so they can take everybody to the store. And the ideal is that what you do is you do the villages so that your 1 acre village now allows you 10,000 square feet of organic gardens and green space, and the ability to change out people so that when Joe over here doesn't get a grip on that alcohol problem that he has, you go over there, Joe, come on, about 4 o'clock this afternoon, the trailer's coming, strap things down because 5 o'clock the crane's coming, and you're going to the back 40 with the other guys over there in the AA camp, and you know what, if you do really good, we're going to have you back. You got to change sometimes. Communities have to be able to interchange. But the beauty of it is that we start looking at this from the standpoint that we start putting together communities. Now, why do I say start putting together communities? The whole reason is that I can take big houses, all these big, giant, obsolete houses, and if you track me at all, you know what I'm doing. I'm taking down giant houses that are basically worthless trash. 51% of our landfills are building materials. Once these building materials go into the landfill, BFI and all the big guys don't pay any taxes on those building materials anymore. It's not personal property. It is trash. Now, if they sell methane gas, if they sell some compost, they have to pay tax on it, but otherwise it sits in that dump for the rest of eternity, and all those valuable resources are gone. That's the future for our kids. That's the natural forest we had to be throwing in the dump. That's all the bricks. That's everything we used all of our energy for, all the hardware that our forefathers made to make it the last 300 years. That's all going in the dump. So if I deflect 51% over here and leave the 49% of trash in the dump, well, first of all, it's going to last a lot longer. Dump fees should drop. But if I take this over here and I barter through the system that I've constructed that allows people to go ahead and educate each other and learn how to do this and share, and I build all these houses out of all this 51% of the trash, in my opinion, they should not be taxable any more than the dump is going to be taxed. And I've also bartered all this, so this is no longer a taxable item, which means that what? It just escaped this system. Now, for the rest of my life, I now have something. And on top of that, I'm going to donate it to a trust. I'm going to remain the beneficiary of that trust for the rest of my life. So if we have to move it, they'll move it to this one over here for me. And when I die, they'll leave somebody else as my beneficiary. It's going to live for 150 years, and I'm just actually only a caretaker for it. And I need to respect that. We need to respect what our fathers and our forefathers made. That hardware they made the last 300 years, we're only 100 years into it. I use stuff that was made in 1867 all the time, and it's not even, it hasn't got rust on it yet. It's made out of the best brass we ever had, the best iron ore we ever had, and I'm going to tell you what, folks, it takes a whole lot of iron ore to make a solid cast iron lock set that was all done by hand and forged by our forefathers, and then it has brass inside of it and all the springs. And if it breaks, it's a spring. I can cut the rake time, and I can go ahead and take that spring and fix that lock and then put it back on there, and it's good for another 40 or 50 years. This is a nice concept. I like it very much. Sadly, we've abandoned that in the United States. We have a built-in obsolescence, and how long can we make it last before it breaks intentionally? And so I'm of the opposite school. So what I did is I said, okay, after being in Austin and then moving down, I had to semi-retire. I read a book that said, workaholism is bad. And having not seen my son very much at that point, I believed it very much. I did. So I moved down to Gonzales. I started a little tiny architecture antique store so I could spend some time with my son. He's about 11. About 14, and really don't care if you're spending much time with them. You know, that was a short-lived experience. And so I was back to work in 60, 80, and 100-hour weeks. And I went to creating what's called Discovery Architectural Antiques, which was the small collection of 4,000 square feet of inventory I had when I was doing a French place. Back when I owned Maynard Road, a warehouse, and I used to own where Hoover's is and all this stuff. I started gathering stuff in Gonzales where I could buy a lot of square footage for free, and to the point I reached about 130,000 square foot of materials on the roof, the largest of its kind in the United States. And I have thousands and thousands of doors and windows and all the parts and pieces to build hundreds and hundreds of houses. People are buying them to decorate. I'm not going to save the world decorating your house with this stuff. So, finally I was inspired by the fact that the times have changed and all these things are coming into motion. And somehow, and again, I used to think I materialized my world by visualizing myself and making it happen because of a positive mental attitude that Napoleon Hill gave me. Later on, I came to learn that perhaps I'm just seeing a vision in my part to play, and I'm compelled to follow that vision, and that's what I think is the future that I'm putting together. Because somehow or another, I turn out that I got all this stuff now, and I can put it together and start building houses with a different perspective, and that's tiny houses, which I have a passion for, having grown up in Germany and other places. And the rest of the world lives in tiny spaces, for those of you who've never been anywhere but in the United States. And all of a sudden, I did my first one. I thought I was crazy, even my ex. One of the reasons she's my ex. But I'm compelled to take these assets and now create something. Create something that's going to make a difference. So this energy of soul that started out just coming here to want to do my book, I made my $1 million in Austin. I made several $1 million in Austin over that period of time. And it's a matter of how much money do you need. Well, I don't need that much, but what happens is you create that monster with $1 million. There's $1 million over here. But on the other side of that spreadsheet, there's $1 million in debt. So your life gets consumed if you go into business, and it's something you almost can't resist because you got to pay attention to. What? Cash flow. I'm still paying attention to cash flow. This is my biggest nemesis in life. So what I'm in the process now of doing is taking millions of dollars worth of resources and showing people how they can take and create trust and such so we can turn these resources into tiny little houses. And by virtue of tearing these down, creating employment and the mechanism for transferring the knowledge, which is the biggest thing we're losing in our generation, it's not being transferred to our kids. And not my generation, I'm 56, I'm the young guy here in the block. The guys that have the knowledge about between me and 75, 80 years old, they actually used hand tools and actually built with the craftsmanship and the quality that I try to build with now. The concept that we build something that's going to last forever. This is what we do with our energy of soul. We make the determination, what is the quality of what I'm going to create with this? Is it just going to be an idea, or am I going to manage to manifest this and transmute this into something that's actually going to change the world? Well, that's a pretty big goal to try to set out. And when I was first given that task, it was a long time ago. Why me? Why are you looking at me to do this job? This is not my job. I'm the wrong guy. Well, all of us have a job. It's an individual choice. That's the amazing part about it, is that all I'm doing is I'm coming along through dialogism, through Bakhtinian dialogism, and every time I meet with you and I talk with you, I'm sparking your energy of soul. I'm sparking your Taurus, if you want to use very much the term. I'm basically inspiring you in a different direction of changing the narrative. And I found out as one professor came from Las Cruces to talk to me about the turtle tribe, the Lakota believe that the turtle tribe, when they come, that will be the transformation in the new age. Well, that means the people that carry their houses on their back. Okay, well, lo and behold, she came because I'm creating the turtle tribe. I'm effectively showing a way to build our new world out of what we have already yielded out of this planet, and not take anything else out of it, and give our kids not only the inspiration, but the life skills training it will take to transform and transmute what is considered to be trillions and trillions of dollars in trash spread out, so we can have an outpost every 150 miles, like a bank, a community bank, where all of grandma's stuff and everything went in and traded for PSLs that went to buy windows, and to train kids with scholarships that came out and tore the houses down, that went into the warehouse and provided everything we need to build the new communities that we can now reduce our energy load, reduce every dollar that doesn't go to Home Depot and leave the country, because we bought all of our doors, all of our windows. And all we have to do to make this happen is change codes so that you no longer force people to buy new wood to build new construction. You can build with salvage lumber, and you no longer have to use double pane insulated glass. You can use single pane glass. Those two changes alone would allow me to provide jobs for all the kids and be able to transfer this knowledge into the next generation who has not a clue how to measure with a tape, how to cut with a saw, how to put anything together, how to basically use their minds to manifest and transmute what they see before them into the solutions that they're going to need to support the 76 million old farts that are going to be going, hey, where's mine? Now, hopefully 20 million of us will pull out and say, we don't need help. We figured it out. We're self-sufficient. We've created our own communities. We don't want any government aid. In fact, we don't even want you to step on the property, because if Sally's running around without her top on today, don't worry, you can't touch her. We're taking care of her. I'll be out without my bottom next week. This is our turf. Stay away. You know, in other words, we're taking care of our own. And that's a real important part about this whole thing, because we've already figured out in the last generation that most of us don't want to be boxed away. Most of us like to be running around as long as we possibly run around and just have people point us in the right direction to get us home at night in our nice little cubicle, and we'll be good. Give me some food, give me some water, tolerate my talking too much, we're going to be great. The fisherman can live with the fisherman, the poker players can live over by the poker players, somebody's always going to want to be the cook, somebody's always going to want to be the nurse. These positions fall to us naturally. That's what we are. That's the energy we are. So, what this story is about is that I came to town with $700 roughly, and I basically turned it into, one time was millions of dollars, and then turned it into something totally different that was collecting all this stuff. And now it's turning totally different into something that's basically, hopefully, going to allow all the people that see it to believe, and this is the important part, to have hope, to have a dream, to understand through our pictures of all the houses that I've created what you can do. You may not do it as nicely as I do it, but you can live in it for the rest of your life. A little bit imperfect. Mine are totally imperfect. I know what all the imperfections are, but they look beautiful when they're done. It's all organic. It's all trees. I put new nails, new screws, insulation, wiring, plumbing. For the most part, that's all you need. And everything else is human energy. Okay? And it's boards that we just took down. They were 25 foot tall and never painted in 120 years. It was beadboard walls and beadboard ceilings and tongue-groove floors with milk paint on them. There was just milk paint and clay and milk protein. Not dangerous, no, lead and stuff like that. But 20-foot long boards. And some of them, it's just material. We don't have the atmosphere to grow trees for 200 years to be mature. It's 185 years old for a longleaf pine tree to reach maturity. It's 200 years for a cypress tree to reach maturity. And needless to say, we can't pay the taxes on the land long enough to grow them that tall. So that's why when we cut them all down by the late 1930s, for the most part, commercially, we didn't grow anymore. Who's going to wait? We grow a tree in 12, 20 years now, 30 years, and chop it down. My trees have 20 years of growth lines in an inch, some of it. So I can use it to span 14 feet that I couldn't even think about doing with new wood. So part of this is taking the old, this beautiful, incredible beings of energy that they sliced and diced up in a massive Salvage taking, and created houses with. There's a lot of energy in there. It's not just sequestered carbon, folks. There's a huge, huge amount of energy. But throw into that, and I was a real estate broker for a long time, and this is where I get a little bit on the outside, but you guys shouldn't be too far outside for this, is the energy that goes with it from people that lived in it. And I have been through houses as a real estate broker where I did not have to be told which room tragedy happened in, because the muck of the room that the guy blew his head off in when the house was being foreclosed, I was pretty much there already. I didn't have to be told. Or when I went through the house and opened the garage door and went, oh yeah, that's where the kid hung himself in, because that sticks. Happy houses have happy energy and sad houses have sad energy, and I had windows out of the insane asylum in Missouri for the criminally insane. They did a lot of things on those guys to try to figure out how to make them right. And there were beautiful 1847 cast iron Victorian steel barred windows with a little vent over here in the corner. Talk about some energy. Man, I'm telling you what. They went to Japan. They're going to be used over in a grocery store in Japan. Along with 500 doors that they're using over there to build their stores with. Because you know what, in Japan and Germany and other places like that, they don't cut down their trees. They did it a long time ago, centuries ago. You get more trouble in Germany for hitting a person, hitting a tree with a car than you do hitting a person with a car. They're more valuable. This is a rare thing in our country, in the world, where you can just go around and cut down 200, 300-year-old trees and not answer to anybody, and that's most of Texas at this point. But the trees that we were cutting down back then were 175-foot tall, 135-foot tall trees without any branches on the bottom. We had 15,000 square miles of lot line, 5,000 square miles of longleaf in Texas alone. It was all deforested pretty much by the 1930s. The lumber industry was so powerful they did not pay with dollars until the 1930s. It was all company store trade. And when your arm got ripped out by the cable, you lost your job, you got kicked out of your house, you put your credits out of the company store, and you were gone. Well, pure salvage living dollars goes back to a day when you bartered everything. And there's a lot of people in the country and in the world still barter. This is not something new. We've got a lot of currencies that are coming out that have to come out in order to be able to come up with some way to trade without supporting the war, the bank, the oil companies, taking 30 cents out of every dollar every time the dollar changes hands, I should say. So the idea behind creating an alternate currency is that people get on board and say, we're going to trade, we're going to trade. You create community when you do that. You create a community center. The community center is funded by the fact that all this stuff comes in at a wholesale price and sells at a retail price, and the community bank is the warehouse. And the benefit from that then goes into the education programs to teach the kids how to do these things, and it goes into the preventative medicine programs, and it does what a community bank should do. All the profits go to the people, but the people that are working on it are making a profit too, because what they're doing is they're bringing materials in that they can now turn into money, and it can be loaned out. PSLs can be loaned because that house out in there in the field that you don't going to use anymore, a salvage appraiser, crossover, can come over and say, hey, that's worth 50,000 PSLs, and after you take it all down, you're going to have a net of 10, I'll loan you 5. Sell the salvage rights to me. If you tear it down, you take the 5,000 PSLs and you go out and hire the kids and they tear it down for you, you're going to make a lot more money. You don't care about that. You live in California. I'll take my 5,000 PSLs. I'll go buy stained glass. I'll go buy some wood flooring. I'll go pay for scholarships for 13 kids to learn how to tear it down. When I get done, I've taught kids skills. You know, there's some people that will be happy all day pulling nails and never complain because they got more work. Hey, this is good. Me, about that hour into it, I'm spinning. My head's looking for something to do. I can't do it. Not the right personality. But there's a right personality for everything. And this is what salvage mining does, is it gives you the deconstructionists, the construction through destruction. And then you get the salvage builders, but you also get the salvage hunters, and that's the people like yourselves that have the ability to go ahead and envision that this house, when I go into a town, and they have all these houses in this town that are condemned, and I go through this town and I say, wow, those are junkers, but oh my goodness, over here, this is a jewel, and this is a jewel, and this is a jewel, and I can get that not only for free, they're going to pay me $2,000 to tear it down because they're taking bids on all these houses to tear down. Wow, okay, I'm about ready to go ahead and open this town up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer a bunch of scholarships, for learning how to tear houses down. Salvage money. The reason I bring this up is this teaches you how any 16-year-old or any 90-year-old can go out there and turn this into a form of living that will empower everybody they touch after that. Because I go out there and I can do one of two things. I can bid on these at what, $1,000 a piece. Everybody else is bidding $5,000. So I'm going to get these. These are given to me now. I get paid to take them down. Okay, and I get about 10 of these. And also while I'm doing this, I'm going out there and looking, here's some other houses that are just nuisance houses, and these guys don't want to deal with them, and they want them down, so nobody gets hurt. No kid gets hung up on the nail. Little portfolio, 10 houses. Now, if I take those 10 houses, then what's the first thing I do? I'm going to try to build a community warehouse, a spot, a good warehouse, and then I offer scholarships. And we have these people come in here, and they help me tear that house down. And we take all this and we move it over here. And we do another house, and now I got salvage miners being trained. And I'm empowering people that used to live around this area, and chances are, if I'd have worked at one of these industrial facilities that are no longer there, that through eminent domain one day, since they're tax written off and there's no value, they abandoned the locals, that Uncle Joe the mayor and Aunt Susie might eminent domain that thing back to be used as a warehouse, if it's no longer valuable, to store all this stuff. Okay, and then we have a place to store. Now what is this? This is a community center because everybody's bringing this in here and getting trained to what now? Build houses. Right here I'm having salvage seminars on how do I do salvage building. So the kids can come in and people can donate stuff, even donate dishes, donate all that stuff Grandma left you, I got no space for it. And get some PSLs in exchange so that you can go ahead and get a scholarship to Junior and the parts to build his house. So his house then goes out here to the musician village out there where he always wanted to be. And I want to use that one house to create 3, get 2 houses down with scholarships. I've created a village over here which is now going to service my warehouse. It's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have. So therefore I can let young kids or people I want to train and give an opportunity to live in these houses for 1 year, to be able to go again mainstream and get into the PSL system and contribute and learn how to either build their own house or to go out and get the materials to barter to build their own house, so the electricians and all the other people out there. And while they're doing that, they're going to get the clothes and the dishes and all the other goodies that come with these old houses because people think they're worthless. And so what's going to happen is I built an entire village out of what turned out to be trash over here that nobody wanted. Now suppose they don't have any for auction, but they've got some guys out here that want to sell those rights. Well, I've got to have appraisers. We've got to go out and identify trillions of dollars worth of this stuff. So I've got to have people go out there and assess it. Is it got rat poop, bat poop, asbestos, lead-based paint? What are the dangers? What's the condition? And what am I going to do? I'm going to basically go ahead and now get documentation so that we put a value to it. And now we say, okay, we have salvage hunters. You need work. We go out there. We pull this down. We have salvage miners available to turn it into something in salvage builders. The idea is, again, all I have to do is inspire these kids. And what do? They go out and say, wow, I can start one of those 150 miles away. There's another whole batch of houses all sitting around. And so what do they need? They need a little help. So what we're doing is we're also going ahead and we're loaning out the trailers, the ways of picking things up. We're giving classes. We're selling the tools that make it easier to get you a higher efficiency, a higher yield. All that's going on at the same time. All because you took a bunch of little teeny tiny houses that nobody wanted and you turned them into jobs, you turned them into houses for people living for the rest of their lives that now they can take with them. And no longer is it location, 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 because what happens is so the neighbor decides to move in and boy oh boy, he's got a bunch of biker friends and now you've got a house on the block and nobody has the guts to go over there and gripe about all the things that are going wrong because you know what, they're a lot bigger and they got a lot meaner toys. So what happens is the value of your house next door just did what? It just plummeted. And another one comes along and wow, everybody on the block's plummeted. Or I can't afford to live because of the taxes. The beauty of this is value is what you make of it. And you go to where you need to go, to whatever village you need to go to. Again, if you take this energy of soul that you have, and you have an idea and you want to manifest it, you go out there. And what I'm trying to do is to show people that it doesn't matter whether you're a woman, or a man, or a child, or an old person, by going back to community links, by linking together with these other Tauruses, by saying, okay, I can't do it myself. But 6 of us, we can take down a house. And what we did with the one in El Campo is to go out there and effectively, with 4 women and 4 guys, 3 of the women incidentally were over 49 years old. That should be pointed out since our age group is probably closer to that spectrum. And climbing on top of the roof, pulling nails, carrying boards, basically helping take the whole thing down. It's a 2-story house, and over an 8-day period we took it down, and it has, oh goodness, probably by the time we're done, we'll get 4 houses we built out of it. That's an 8-day period, but not all the time did all those people work. Average might have had 5 people on the site, averaged out over a 9-day period. So, all that goes on trailers, it all goes back, we build houses out of it. Those 4 houses then become, for the rest of their lives, their sanctuary. That could be in a 5-week process. Okay? No dollars, no job, Nothing required, because the extra stuff we got after this is going to pay for the electrical, it's going to pay for the plumbing, it's going to pay for the pieces we need. All it took was the energy of soul, effectively the human energy that the people who participated in it create. The truck, the trailer, those are borrowable items. The tools, those can be loaned out. Now, once people realize this, and you go, hey, you and your friend and 4 other people don't have to be beholden, because once you build a house, and you put it out in this little village, and if you can do it, donate the house to the village where it's basically a nonprofit, it's basically you're the beneficiary, and you can stay there for the rest of your life. Well, now all of a sudden your medical bills aren't going to take it away from you. IRS can't touch it. You don't have to worry about debt. You have a home. And I think it's one of the most critical things we can give people, our children, anybody, is their own space, no matter how small. And you'd be amazed what I can do with a 10 by 12 space. It's luxury, sheer luxury. When you get into 12 by 21, that's a couple with a kid in luxury in most parts of the world, in particular the way I build it. But we overkill. We basically try to do something that's so impressive, that's so knocked out of the park, that everybody will go, and what? Plant that seed as deep in the gray matter as they can. I create seeds. I create seeds that are my art. My art is basically something to plant, to sow, to inspire, to impassion, to provide hope, to energize and to empower people. Empower what? That energy within them. It's the fuel for local solutions. I don't believe we can fix it from the top down. We have to fix it from the bottom up. The top is corrupted. I'm a firm believer in that. I think it's manifested by individuals, and it's the individuals who are going to make the change. It's not the government, it's not the big corporations, it's not the media. It's nobody but us manifesting our ideas by actually going out and taking action. And I'm going to tell you, if you read, I have a poem on there about being at the edge of the chasm. If you really believe, if you have a passion, you'll throw everything you own into that passion. You will risk everything you've got to make it happen. Because nothing else is more important than that. It's like raising a child. If the truck is coming at your child, you're going to throw your body in front of it to block that child and save it. So is your passion. If you really believe in something, you give everything you have to it.